Hi grade 8s, it's me, Miss Ballum again. I'm going to read chapter 2 of The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. Dally was waiting for Johnny and me under the streetlight at the corner of Pickett and Sutton, and since we got there early, we had time to go over to the drugstore in the shopping center and goof around. We bought Cokes and blew the straws at the waitress and walked around eyeing things that were lying out in the open until the manager got wise to us and suggested we leave. He was too late, though. Dally walked out with 2 packages of Cools under his jacket. Then we went across the street and down Sutton a little way to the Dingo. There were lots of drive-ins in town. The Socias go to the Way Out and to Rusty's, and the Greasers go to the Dingo and to Jay's. The Dingo is a pretty rough hangout. There's always a fight going on there, and once a girl got shot. We walked around talking to all the Greasers and hoods we knew, leaning in car windows or hopping into the back seats and getting in on who was running away and who was in jail and who was going with who and who could whip who and who stole what and when and why. We knew everybody there. There was a pretty good fight while we were there between a big 23-year-old greaser and a Mexican hitchhiker. We left when the switchblades came out because the cops would be coming soon and nobody in his right mind wants to be around when the fuzz show up. We crossed Sutton and cut around behind Spencer's Special, the discount house, and chased 2 junior high kids across the field for a few minutes. By then it was dark enough to sneak in over the back fence of the Nightly Double drive-in movie. It was the biggest in town and showed 2 movies every night, and on weekends 4. You could say we were going to the Nightly Double and had time to go all over town. We all had the money to get in. It only costs a quarter, and if you're not in a car. But Dally hated to do things the legal way. He liked to show that he didn't care whether there was law or not. He went around trying to break laws. We went to the rows of seats in front of the concession stand to sit down. Nobody else was there except 2 girls who were sitting down front. Dally eyed them coolly, then walked down the aisle and sat right behind them. I had a sick feeling that Dally was up to his usual tricks, and I was right. He started talking, loud enough for the 2 girls to hear. He started out bad and got worse. Dallas could talk awful dirty if he wanted to, and I guess he wanted to. I felt my ears get hot. Two-Bit or Steve or even Soda would have gone right along with him, just to see if they could embarrass the girls. But that kind of kicks just don't appeal to me. I sat there, struck dumb, and Johnny left hastily to get a Coke. I wouldn't have felt so embarrassed if they had been greaser girls. I might even have helped old Dallas out. But those 2 girls weren't our kind. They were tough-looking girls, dressed sharp and really good-looking. They looked about 16 or 17. One had short dark hair and the other had long red hair. The redhead was getting mad, or scared. She sat up straight and she was chewing hard on her gum, and the other one pretended not to hear Dally. Dally was getting impatient. He put his feet up on the back of the redhead's chair, winked at me, and beat his own record for saying something dirty. She turned around and gave him a cool stare. "Take your feet off my chair and shut your trap." Boy, she was good looking. I'd seen her before. She was a cheerleader at our school. I'd always thought she was stuck up. Dally merely looked at her and kept his feet where they were. "Who's gonna make me?" The other one turned around and watched us. "That's the greaser that jockeys for the /J sometimes," she said, as if we couldn't hear. I had heard the same tone a million times. Greaser, greaser, greaser. Oh yeah, I had heard that tone before too many times. What they were doing at the drive-in without a car, I thought. What were they doing at the drive-in without a car, I thought. And Dallas said, "I know you 2. I've seen you around rodeos." "It's a shame you can't ride a bull as half as good as you can talk it," the redhead said coolly and turned back around. That didn't bother Dally in the least. "You 2 barrel race, huh? You better leave us alone," the redhead said in a biting voice, "or I'll call the cops." "Oh, my. Dally looked bored. "You've got me scared to death. You ought to see my record sometime, baby." He grinned slyly. "Guess what I've been in for?" "Please leave us alone," she said. "Why don't you just be nice and leave us alone?" Dally grinned. "I'm never nice. Want a Coke?" She was mad by then. "I wouldn't drink it if I was starving in the desert. Get lost, hood." Dally merely shrugged and strolled off. The girl looked at me. I was half scared of her. I'm half scared of all nice girls, especially Socias. "Are you going to start in on us too?" I shook my head wide-eyed. "No." Suddenly she smiled. Gosh, she was pretty. "You don't look the type. What's your name?" I wish she hadn't asked me that. I hate to tell people my name for the first time. "Ponyboy Curtis." Then I waited for "You're kidding," or "That's not your real name," or one of the other remarks I usually get. Ponyboy's my real name, and personally I like it. The redhead just smiled. That's an original and lovely name. My dad was an original person, I said. I've got a brother named Soda Pop. It says so on his birth certificate. My name's Sherry, but they call me Cherry because of my hair. Cherry Valance. I know, I said. You're a cheerleader. We go to the same school. You don't look old enough to be going to high school, the dark-haired girl said. I'm not. I got put up a year in grade school. Cherry looked at me. What's a nice, smart kid like you running around with trash like that for? I felt myself stiffen. I'm a Grease, same as Dally. He's my buddy. I'm sorry, Pony Boy, she said softly. Then she said briskly, your brother's Soda Pop. Does he work at a gasoline station at DX, I think? Yeah. Man, your brother is one doll. I might have guessed you two were brothers. You look alike. I grinned with pride. I don't think I look one bit like Soda, but it's not every day I hear socials telling me they think my brother is the doll. Didn't he used to ride in rodeo, saddle bronc? Yeah, Dad made him quit after he tore a ligament, though. We still hang around rodeos a lot. I've seen you two barrel race. You're good. Thanks, Cherry said, and the other girl, who was named Marcia, said, How come we don't see your brother at school? He's not any older than 16 or 17, is he? I winced and sighed. I've told you I can't stand it that Soda dropped out. He's a dropout, I said roughly. Dropout. Maybe think of some poor, dumb-looking hoodlum wandering the streets, breaking out at streetlights. It didn't fit my happy-go-lucky brother at all. It fitted Dally perfectly, but you couldn't hardly say it about Soda. Johnny came back down then and sat beside me. He looked around for Dally and managed a shy hi to the girls and tried to watch the movie. He was nervous, though. Johnny was always nervous around strangers. Cherry looked at him, sizing him up as she had me. Then she smiled softly, and I knew she had sized him up right. Dally came striding back with an armful of Cokes. He handed one to each of the girls and sat down beside Cherry. This might cool you off. She gave him an incredulous look, and then she threw her Coke in his face. That might cool you off, Greaser. After you wash your mouth and learn to talk and act decent, I might cool off too. Dally wiped the Coke off his face with his sleeve and smiled dangerously. If I had been Cherry, I would have been beat it out of there. I knew that smile. Fiery, huh? Well, that's the way I like him. He started to put his arm around her, but Johnny reached over and stopped him. Leave her alone, Dally. Huh? Dally was taken off guard. He stared at Johnny in disbelief. Johnny couldn't say boo to a goose. Johnny gulped and got a little pale. But he said it. You heard me. Leave her alone. Dallas scoffed for a bit. If it had been me or Two-Bit or Steve or Soda or anyone but Johnny, Dally would have flattened him without a moment's hesitation. You just didn't tell Dally Winston what to do. One time in a dime store, a guy told him to move over at the candy counter. Dally had turned around and belted him so hard he knocked a tooth loose. A complete stranger, too. But Johnny was the gang's pet, and Dally just couldn't hit him. He was Dally's pet, too. Dally got up and stalked off, his fists jammed in his pockets with a frown on his face. He didn't come back. Cherry sighed in relief. Thanks, he had me scared to death. Johnny managed an admiring grin. You sure didn't show it. Nobody talks to Dally like that. She smiled. From what I saw, you do. Johnny's ears got red. I was still staring at him. It had taken more than nerve for him to say what he'd said to Dally. Johnny worshipped the ground Dallas walked on, and I had never heard Johnny talk back to anyone, much less his hero. Marcia grinned at us. She was a bit smaller than Cherry. She was cute, but that Cherry Valance was a real looker. You all sit up here with us. You can protect us. Johnny and I looked at each other. He grinned suddenly, raised his eyebrows so that they disappeared under his bangs. Would we ever have something to tell the boys? His eyes said plainly. We had picked up 2 girls, and classy ones at that. Not any greaser broads for us, but real socias. Soda would flip when I told him. Okay, I said nonchalantly. Might as well. I sat between them, and Johnny sat next to Cherry. How old are you all? Marcia said. 14, I said. 16, said Johnny. That's funny, Marcia said. I thought you were both 16, Cherry finished for her. I was grateful. Johnny looked 14, and he knew it, and it bugged him something awful. Johnny grinned. How come you all ain't scared of us like you were Dally? Cherry sighed. You two are too sweet to scare anyone. First of all, you didn't join in on Dally's dirty talk, and you made him leave us alone. And when we asked you to sit up here with us, you didn't act like it was an invitation to make out for the night. Besides that, I've heard about Dallas Winston, and he looked as hard as nails and twice as tough. You two don't look mean. Sure, I said tiredly. We're young and innocent. No, Cherry said softly, looking at me carefully. Not innocent. You've seen too much to be innocent. Just not dirty. Dally's okay, Johnny said defensively, and I nodded. You take up for your buddies, no matter what they do. When you're in a gang, you stick up for the members. If you don't stick up for them, stick together. Make like brothers. It isn't a gang anymore. It's a pack. A snarling, distrustful, blistering pack like the Socs in their social clubs, or the street gangs in New York, or the wolves in the timber. He's tough, but he's a cool old guy. He'd leave you alone if he knew you, I said, and that was true. When Steve's cousin from Kansas came down, Dally was decent to her and watched his swearing. We all did around nice girls who were the cousinly type. I don't know how to explain it. We try to be nice to the girls we see once in a while, like cousins or the girls in our class, but we still watch a nice girl go by on the street and say all the kinds of lousy stuff about her. Don't ask me why. I don't know why. Well, Marcia said with finality, I'm glad he doesn't know us. I kind of admire him, Cherry said softly, so only I heard, and then we settled down to watch the movie. Oh yeah, we found out why they were without a car. They'd come with their boyfriends, but walked out on them when they found out the boys had brought some booze along. The boys had gotten angry and left. I don't care if they did, Cherry sounded annoyed. It's not my idea of a good time to sit in a drive-in and watch people get drunk. You could tell by the way she said it was her idea of a good time was probably high class and probably expensive. They decided to stay and see the movie anyway. It was one of those beach party movies with no plot and no acting, but a lot of girls in bikinis and some swinging songs, so it was all right. We were all four sitting there in silence when suddenly a strong hand came down on Johnny's shoulder and another on mine, and a deep voice said, Okay, greasers, you've had it. I almost jumped out of my skin. It was like having someone leap out from behind a door and yell boo at you. I looked fearfully over my shoulder, and there was Two-Bit, grinning like a cheesy cat. Glory Two-Bit, scare us half to death. He was good at voice imitations and had sounded for all the world like a snarling Soc. Then I looked at Johnny. His eyes were shut and he was white as a ghost. His breath was coming in smothered gasps. Two-Bit knew better than to scare Johnny like that. I guess he'd forgotten. He's kind of scatterbrained. Johnny opened his eyes and said weakly, Hey, Two-Bit. Two-Bit messed up his hair. Sorry, kid, he said. I forgot. He climbed over the chair and plopped down beside Marcia. Who's this, your great-aunts? Great-grandmother's twice removed, Cherry said smoothly. I couldn't tell if Two-Bit was drunk or not. It's kind of hard to tell with him. He acts boozed up sometimes, even when he's sober. He cocked one eyebrow up and the other down, which is what he always does when something puzzles him or bothers him or when he feels like saying something smart. Shoot, you're 96 if you're a day. I'm a knight, Marcy said brightly. Two-Bit stared at her admiringly. Brother, you're a sharp one. Where'd you two ever get to be picked up by a couple of greasy hoods like Pony and Johnny? We really picked them up, Marcy said. We're really Arabian slave traders, and they're thinking about shenanigans with them. They're worth 10 camels apiece at least. 5, Two-Bit disagreed. They don't talk Arabian, I don't think. Say something in Arabian, Johnny Cake. Ah, cut it out, Johnny broke in. Dally was bothering them, and when he left they wanted us to sit with them, to protect them. Against wisecracking greasers like you, probably. Two-Bit grinned because Johnny didn't usually get sassy like that. We thought we were doing good if we could get him to talk at all. Incidentally, we don't mind being called greaser by another greaser. It's kind of playful then. Hey, where is old Dally anyway? He went hunting some action, booze or dames or a fight. I hope he don't get jailed tonight. He just got out. He'll probably find a fight, Two-Bit stated cheerfully. That's why I came over. Mr. Timothy Shepard and co. are looking for whoever so kindly slashed their car's tires. And since Mr. Curly Shepard spotted Dallas doing it, well, does Dally have a blade? Not that I know of, I said. I think he's got a piece of pipe, but he busted his blade this morning. Good. Tim will fight fair if Dally don't pull a blade on him. Dally shouldn't have any trouble. Cherry and Marcy were staring at us. You don't believe in playing rough or anything, do you? A fair fight isn't rough, Two-Bit said. Blades are rough, so are chains and heaters and pool sticks and rumbles. Skin fighting isn't rough. It blows off steam better than anything. There's nothing wrong with throwing a few punches. Socs are rough. They gang up on one or two of us, or they rumble each other until they're social clubs. Us greasers usually stick together. But when we do fight amongst ourselves, it's a fair fight between two. And Dally deserves whatever he gets. 'Cause slashed tires ain't no joke when you've got to work to pay for them. He got spotted too, and that was his fault. Our one rule, besides stick together, is don't get caught. He might get beat up, he might not. Either way, there's not going to be any blood feud between our outfit and Shepard's. If we need them tomorrow, they'd show. If Tim beats Dally's head in, then tomorrow asks us for help in a rumble, we'll show. Dally was getting kicks. He got caught. He pays up. No sweat. Yeah, boy, Cherry said sarcastically. Real simple. Sure, Marcy said unconcerned. If he gets killed or something, you just bury him, no sweat. You dig okay, baby. Two-Bit grinned and lit a cigarette. Anyone want a weed? I looked at Two-Bit admiringly. He sure put things into words good. Maybe he was still a junior at 18 and a half, but maybe his sideburns were too long, and maybe he did get boozed up too much, but he sure understood things. Cherry and Marcia shook their heads at his offerings of cigarettes, but Johnny and I reached for one. Johnny's color was back, and he was breathing regular, but his hand was shaking ever so slightly. A cigarette would steady it. Pony boy, will you come with me to get some popcorn? Cherry asked. I jumped up. Sure, y'all want some? I do, said Marcia. She was finishing the Coke Dally had given her. I realized then that Marcia and Cherry weren't alike. Cherry had said she wouldn't drink Dally's Coke if she was starving, and she meant it. It was a principle of the thing, but Marcia saw no reason to throw away a perfectly good, free Coke. Me too, said Two-Bit. He flipped me a 50-cent piece. Get Johnny some too, I'm buying, he added as Johnny started to reach into his jacket pocket. We went to the concession stand, and, as usual, there was a line a mile long, so we had to wait. Quite a few kids turned to look at us. You don't see a Kid Grease and a Sochi cheerleader together often. Cherry didn't seem to notice. Your friend, the one with the sideburns, he's okay? He ain't dangerous like Dally, if that's what you mean. He's okay. She smiled and her eyes showed that her mind was on something else. Johnny, he's been hurt bad sometime, hasn't he? It was more of a statement than a question. Hurt and scared. It was the Socs, I said nervously, because there were plenty of Socs milling around, and some of them were giving me funny looks, as if I shouldn't be with Cherry or something. I didn't like to talk about it either, Johnny getting beat up, I mean, but I started in talking a little faster than I normally do because I don't like to think about it either. It was almost 4 months ago. I had walked down to the DX station to get a bottle of pop and to see Steve and Soda because they'll always buy me a couple of bottles and let me help work on the cars. I don't like to go on the weekends because there's usually a bunch of girls down there flirting with Soda. All kinds of girls. Socias too. I don't care too much yet for girls yet. Soda says I'll grow out of it. He did. It was a warmish spring day with the sun shining bright, but it was getting chilly and dark by the time we started for home. We were walking because we had left Steve's car at the station. At the corner of our blocks, there's a wide open field where we play football and hang out, and it's often a site for rumbles and fistfights. We were passing it, kicking rocks down the street and finishing our last bottle of a Pepsi, when Steve noticed something lying on the ground. He picked it up. It was Johnny's blue jeans jacket, the only jacket he had. Looks like Johnny forgot his jacket, Steve said, slinging it over his shoulder to take it to Johnny's house. Suddenly he stopped and examined it more carefully. There was a stain of color of rust across the collar. He looked at the ground. There were some more stains on the grass. He looked up and across the field with a stricken expression on his face. I think we all heard the low moan and saw the dark, motionless hump on the other side of the lot at the same time. Soda reached him first. Johnny was lying face down on the ground. Soda turned him over gently, and I nearly got sick. Someone had beaten him badly. We were used to seeing Johnny banged up. His father clobbered him around a lot, and although it made us madder than heck, we couldn't do anything about it. But those beatings had nothing like this. Johnny's face was cut up and bruised and swollen. There was a wide gash across from his temple to his cheekbone. He would carry that scar all his life. His white t-shirt was splattered with blood. I just stood there, trembling with sudden cold. I thought he might be dead, but surely nobody could be beaten like that and live. Steve closed his eyes for a second, muffled a grin as he dropped on his knees beside Soda. Somehow the gang sensed what had happened. Two-Bit was suddenly there beside me, and for once his comical grin was gone and his dancing gray eyes were stormy. Derry had seen us from our porch and ran towards us, suddenly skidding to a halt. Dally was there too, swearing under his breath and turning away with a sick expression on his face. I wondered about it vaguely. Dally had seen people killed on the streets of New York's West Side. Why did he look sick now? Johnny? Soda lifted him up and held him against his shoulder. He gave the limp body a slight shake. Hey, Johnny Cake. Johnny didn't open his eyes, but there came a soft question. Soda? Yeah, it's me, Soda said. Don't talk. You're going to be okay. There was a whole bunch of them, Johnny went on, swallowing, ignoring Soda's command. A blue Mustang full. I got so scared. He tried to swear, but suddenly started crying, fighting to control himself, then sobbing all the more because he couldn't. I had seen Johnny take a whipping by a 2x4 from his old man and never let out a whimper. That made it worse to see him break now. Soda just held him and pushed Johnny's hair back out of his eyes. It's okay, Johnny Cake. They're gone now. It's okay. Finally, between sobs, Johnny managed to gasp out his story. He had been hunting our football to practice a few kicks when a blue Mustang had pulled up beside the lot. There were 4 Socs in it. They had caught him, and one of them had a lot of rings on his hand. That's what had cut Johnny so badly. It wasn't just that they had beaten him up half to death. He could take that. They had scared him. They had threatened him with everything under the sun. Johnny was high-strung anyway, a nervous wreck from getting belted every time he turned around and from hearing his parents fight all the time. Living in those conditions might have turned someone else rebellious and bitter. It was killing Johnny. He had never been a coward. He was a good man in a rumble. He stuck up for the gang and kept his mouth shut good around cops. But after that night of the beating, Johnny was jumpier than ever. I don't think he'd ever get over it. Johnny never walked by himself after that. And Johnny, who was the most law-abiding of all of us, now carried in his back pocket a 6-inch switchblade. He'd use it too if he ever got jumped again. They had scared him that much. He would kill the next person who jumped him. Nobody was ever going to beat him up like that again. Not over his dead body. I had nearly forgotten that Cherry was listening to me, but when I came back to reality and looked at her, I was startled to find her white as a sheet. All Socs aren't like that, she said. You have to believe me, Pony Boy. Not all of us are like that. Sure, I said. That's like saying all you greasers are like Dallas Winston. I'll bet he's jumped a few people. I digested that. It was true. Dally had jumped people. He had told us stories about muggings in New York that had made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. But not all of us were that bad. Cherry no longer looked sick, only sad. I'll bet you think the Socs have it made. The rich kids, the West Side Socs. I'll tell you something, Pony Boy, and it may come to you as a surprise. We have troubles you've never even heard of. You want to know something? She looked at me straight in the eye. Things are rough all over. I believe you, I said. We'd better get back out there with the popcorn or Two-Bit will think I ran off with his money. We went back and watched the movie through again. Marcy and Two-Bit were hitting it off fine. Both had the same scatterbrained sense of humor. But Cherry and Johnny and I just sat there looking at the movie and not talking. I quit worrying about everything and thought about how nice it was to sit with a girl without having to listen to her swear or beat her off with the club. I knew Johnny liked it too. He didn't talk to girls much. Once, when Dallas was in reform school, Sylvie had started hanging on to Johnny and sweet-talking him, and Steve got a hold of her and told her if she ever tried any of her tricks with Johnny, he'd personally beat the tar out of her. Then he gave Johnny a little lecture on girls and how a sneaking little broad like Sylvia would get him into a lot of trouble. As a result, Johnny never spoke to girls much. But whether that was because he was scared of Steve or because he was shy, I couldn't tell you. I got the same lecture from Two-Bit after we'd picked up a couple of girls downtown one day. I thought it was funny because girls are one subject that Derry thinks I use my head about. And it was really had been funny because Two-Bit was half crocked when he gave me the lecture, and he told me some stories about made me want to crawl under the floor or something. But he had been talking about girls like Sylvie and the girls he and Dally had and the rest picked up at the drive-ins in downtown. He never said anything about Soci girls, so I figured it was all right we were sitting here with them. Even if they did have their own troubles. I really couldn't see what Socs would have to sweat about. Good grades, good cars, good girls, Mandras and Mustangs and Covraires. Man, I thought, if I had worries like that, I'd consider myself lucky. I know better now.